friendly reminder, this is a horror movie so terrifying that even ghosts would be scared. Directed by horror film master James Wan, it's considered the pinnacle of horror cinema, the first installment of Insidious. Are you ready? The movie begins with a seance, where the medium wears a mask to summon spirits, and an assistant wears headphones to monitor any changes in the surrounding magnetic field. As the man calls out the name of the entity they're trying to contact, everyone's heartbeat quickens. Suddenly, the flashbulbs start to flicker, and a piercing scream echoes through the room. Before anyone could react, the next moment, the boy possessed by the demon effortlessly flipped a table, and his father was thrown into the corner of the room. The demon's terrifying power seems far beyond their imagination. And all of this starts with the Lambert family moving into a new house. They thought their new life would start smoothly, but on the very first night, while Dalton was playing alone upstairs, the door to a room slowly opened, as if an invisible force was drawing him toward it. So, in the dead of night, Dalton sneaks up to the attic, holding a lantern. As he explores, he discovers something strange in the attic. Curious, Dalton climbs the stairs, reaching out to touch the mysterious object. But in the next instant, the stairs break, and Dalton falls. He saw a terrifying ghostly figure appear in the darkness. His mother, Renee, hears the noise and rushes upstairs, followed by Josh. When they arrive at the attic, they find nothing. Their son has only minor injuries, and the couple thinks nothing of it. Josh picks up Dalton and heads downstairs. However, as they leave, Renee notices a box in the corner of the room. Oddly, they hadn't placed anything in the attic since they just moved in. So how could a box be there? Even stranger, since that night in the attic, Dalton suddenly fell seriously ill, pale and unconscious, and he remained in a deep sleep for 3 months. During this time, the couple takes Dalton to the hospital multiple times, but the doctors find nothing physically wrong with him. His vitals are perfectly normal. So what exactly is wrong with Dalton? The couple is increasingly desperate, even losing focus at work. Eventually, even their younger son, Foster, starts experiencing odd things. Every night, Foster hears strange footsteps in his room. Whenever he wakes up, the footsteps mysteriously vanish. Scared by the sight of his unconscious brother, Foster nervously closes the door. But just as he closed the door, the footsteps started again. Terrified, he crawls back into bed, too scared to breathe. He then told his mother about it.
I don't like when he walks.
Renee is confused. Dalton is still in a coma, so how could he be walking around in his brother's room? She quickly tells Josh, but he dismisses it as just a child's imagination. Then, just as he finishes speaking, there's a sudden, frantic knocking at the door. Josh goes downstairs to investigate, but finds no one. So, they lock the door and go back to bed. But as soon as they return to their room, the blaring alarm goes off, and the door they just locked swings open. At this point, Josh can't sit still anymore. He grabs an iron rod and carefully walks toward the door. After confirming no one is there, he locks the door once more. The family survives the night, but little do they know, this is just the beginning. The next morning, while Renee was changing her comatose son's diapers, she accidentally discovered a huge blood handprint on his bed, as if something was trying to drag him away. Seeing this, Renee couldn't help but recall the terrifying events from the previous night. It all started the night before when Josh went downstairs. Suddenly, Renee heard crying, and she thought it was their little daughter. She hurried to check, but as soon as she entered the room, she saw a chilling, horrifying, ghostly figure behind the curtains, which startled her immensely. Now, looking at the blood handprint, Renee began to suspect that something sinister might be residing in the house. After all, so many strange things had been happening, it couldn't just be coincidence. After discussing it with her husband, they decided to move out of the house. They thought that if they left, the strange occurrences would stop, but little did they know, this house was even more bizarre than the last one. On the very first day after moving in, Renee happened to see another strange child while throwing out the trash. She rushed inside, but the child instantly disappeared. Renee was left bewildered. They had already moved into a new house. How could these things still be happening? As she was pondering, the door beside her mysteriously slammed shut, and the child appeared again, vanishing in the blink of an eye. Renee cautiously followed the child's path, only to see the rocking horse in the room rocking on its own, and the strange child disappeared once more. This made Renee even more frightened. As she tried to stop the rocking horse, the door behind her suddenly flung open. Renee hurriedly walked out, feeling a faint sense that something might be hiding inside the closet. She grabbed a stick, heart racing, and carefully approached. Looking at the eerie child and hearing the frantic footsteps echoing in her ears, Renee finally realized that these strange occurrences wouldn't end just because they moved. In fact, they were getting worse. She then discussed with her husband the idea of calling a psychic to see if there was something evil in the house. The person they contacted was Elise, the white-haired woman from the beginning of the movie. Elise was a top-tier exorcist, having dealt with numerous demons. Elise only walked around Renee's house, and she immediately sensed something was wrong. She then entered another room and specifically warned her assistant, Specs, not to turn on the lights. In this room, Elise not only saw Dalton, who was in a coma, but also immediately recognized that he was possessed by a demon. The terrifying demon was hiding in the rafters of their house. Elise urgently asked Specs to draw the demon's appearance based on her description. When Renee saw the drawing, she almost fainted. It was the same terrifying figure she had seen earlier. How could it have followed them here? Through Elise's investigation, they finally found some answers. She told the couple that Dalton wasn't in a coma due to some illness, but because he was a natural astral projector. Astral projection, in simple terms, means the soul leaving the body. Dalton thought he was traveling, but in reality his soul had left his body and was aimlessly drifting through another realm. This had caused his soul to travel farther and farther away until a demon spotted him. That's why so many strange events had been happening. Thankfully, they had caught on in time. If they had waited any longer, the demon would have dragged Dalton's soul into hell. Elise also explained that the only way to save Dalton now was to perform a seance and bring his soul back from the other realm. Only then would everything end. If not, the demon inside him would grow even more powerful. Without wasting another moment, they prepared for the seance. As the ritual began, fierce winds howled, and thunder and lightning roared. In the flash of lightning, the demon finally revealed itself, knocking Specs flying with a single blow. Elise quickly stood up, pressing her hand firmly on Dalton's forehead and commanding the demon to leave. As the demon left Dalton's body, the room fell into a brief moment of calm. Seizing this opportunity, Elise contacted Josh's mother, Lorraine. Josh was completely confused by this. None of this had anything to do with his mother, so why had Elise suddenly called her in? Then, Elise revealed a shocking piece of information to Josh. It turned out that Dalton's condition was a result of something Josh had inherited, a rare, special ability. As a child, Josh also frequently experienced soul travel, just like Dalton, and strange events would occur around him. In fact, Lorraine, Josh's mother, had seen a ghostly figure hovering near Josh when taking pictures of him as a child. At first, she thought it was just a problem with the camera, but as strange occurrences escalated, the ghostly figure became more and more distinct in the photos. That was when Lorraine realized her son had been haunted by a demon. In order to save her son, Lorraine asked Elise to perform a seance for Josh, sealing his memories and special abilities, which allowed everything to return to normal. Josh was in disbelief after hearing all this, but the truth was undeniable, and he had no choice but to accept it. Now, with his son trapped in danger, the only way to save him was to break Josh's seal and let him enter the other realm to bring Dalton back. Only then could the family avoid the catastrophe. With no other choice, Josh had no option but to follow Elise's advice. Josh immediately took a lantern and followed Elise's lead into the further. He carefully stepped into the darkness, but as he entered a room, a demon wearing a wedding dress suddenly flashed past him. Josh quickly followed, but the further he went, the more demons appeared. In the corners there were crying women, fleeting children, and eerily silent rooms. Even in the living room, 3 demons with lifeless expressions sat waiting. It felt as though time had fallen into an abyss, and everything was filled with fear. Josh continued to navigate cautiously, searching for his son. Suddenly, a gunshot echoed through his ears. He turned and rushed back to the living room, only to see the previously motionless demons now holding a hunting rifle. Terrified, Josh fled, only to accidentally find himself in front of a red door. He guessed that his son might be inside, so he hurried forward. But in the next moment, a terrifying demon appeared before him and lunged at him, knocking Josh to the ground. Meanwhile, in the real world, Josh began to struggle uncontrollably. Seeing this, Elise immediately guided Josh with her voice. He finally managed to break free from the demon's grip and, with all his strength, punched the demon away.
Away from me!
He then opened the red door, crossed the dim, silent hallway, and at last found his son, trapped inside. But as Josh was about to unshackle Dalton, his son suddenly froze in terror, as if he had seen something horrifying. Josh turned around in confusion and saw a lipstick-faced demon standing right behind him. The demon lunged at Josh, knocking him to the ground. Before Josh could recover, the demon attacked again, slapping him away with great force. This time, the demon's attack affected the real world as well. Josh's house began to shake violently. Realizing he couldn't fight the demon, Josh quickly grabbed Dalton and fled in a panic. But along the way, it was pitch black, filled with ghosts, and eerie screams occasionally echoed through the air. As the spirits grew more numerous, the house in the real world began to tremble more violently, and the lights flickered out. In this critical moment, Renee hurriedly used her voice to guide Josh and Dalton, helping them find their way back through the demonic surroundings. As the house began to return to normal, Elise knew Josh and Dalton would be back soon. But just as this happened, the room began to tremble again, and an eerie sound echoed through every corner.
They're crossing over.
As soon as Elise finished speaking, the cabinet doors in the house suddenly swung open, and a demon appeared behind the kitchen. With no other option, they quickly closed the cabinet door and continued to shine the light on Josh's body. This way, the terrifying demons that kept emerging could not pass through Josh's body into the real world. Meanwhile, Renee rushed over to her husband, calling out for him to return quickly. Just as Josh opened the door to the house, he caught a glimpse of the demon from his childhood in the mirror. Josh finally returned to the real world, and their son woke up. But it seemed like the nightmare wasn't over yet. As Elise prepared to leave, she suddenly sensed something from Josh. She picked up her camera and snapped a photo of him. This action completely enraged Josh, and in a fit of rage, he immediately strangled Elise to death. When Renee noticed something was wrong and rushed over, she found Elise lying on the couch, pale and lifeless, while her husband had mysteriously disappeared. She searched the room, but the only thing she found was a camera.
I'm right here.
One has to admit, director James Wan truly excels in horror filmmaking. He doesn't even need high-energy scenes to create an atmosphere so filled with terror that it feels overwhelming. A true master of horror. See you next time.